forget about the intro. We gotta talk about the Eclipse. I gotta say, guys, that the Golden Age finale does hit very hard, much more so than I thought it would. And even though that I knew that the Eclipse was coming, I really was not ready for it. The finale to the Golden Age arc is iconic for a reason, and I see why it was iconic. It's one of the most talked about, infamous moments in all of manga or media, even media today. People are talking about it years later. I'm talking about it right now in 2026. You still got certain scenes that are floating around online. I personally got spoiled on the one scene that I'm sure all of you know what I'm referring to. Now, of course, I'm not going to go into all of the details because YouTube guidelines and all, but let's just say that it's as brutal and as devastating as people say it is. And I'm not going to lie, say what you want, but I legitimately did cry in certain moments while I was reading it. I genuinely was not prepared for what I was about to read. And it wasn't just from the violence, it was like the sheer emotional weight of everything that's going on. Characters that we've built up immediately taken from us. And like I said in the last video, I'm going to be covering volume by volume, and even though most of volume 5 is in the Conviction arc, my mind is still lingering on what happened towards the beginning of this book. For me, it's going to completely change the tone going forward, and now it's clear to me why people consider this one of the darkest moments in manga history. And of course, there's a lot of things that I'm going to be talking about in this video, but one of the first things that I want to address is that even though we've been building up everything inside of the Golden Age to this one point, everything was building up to the Eclipse, it felt way too fast for me. Even though that I knew that the Eclipse was going to be devastating, I still wasn't emotionally ready for how violently and quickly everything was taken away from me. Each death hit me way harder than I expected. I thought we were going to get this heartfelt, touching moment with Gaston, and then out of nowhere his head explodes. Everything was just so sudden for me. And Quercus, who I've never really liked in the story, he's hated Guts from the very beginning. He was always faithful to Griffith. He disowned Guts as soon as he decided to chase his own dreams. Even in previous videos, you know, I was giving Quercus a hard time, but something about watching him descend into madness and laugh hysterically as all of his friends and comrades are being torn apart, something actually just, I'm not gonna lie, I actually teared up for Quercus, and I shouldn't really have a reason to. Judo was one of my favorites. Even in his final moments, he gave everything that he had to make sure that Casca made it out of there, and it was just, oh, so gut-wrenching. And then out of nowhere, we get this unexpected confession that he was actually in love with Casca the entire time. I thought I was going crazy, like, you're gonna tell me this now after Judo was being taken away from me? I wasn't expecting it, but that one really hurt. Ugh. And Pippin, man, it is no secret to those of you who have watched my previous videos that Pippin is my #1 favorite character, and seeing him put his life on the line to protect everyone. He doesn't get off screens, but like we get a very, very small panel of him putting in work against the apostles, only to have him come back to be this hollowed out puppet that's being controlled by the Count. And legitimately, it broke me. I knew it was coming, and I wasn't ready for it. I thought I was prepared for the Eclipse, but in all honesty, I really wasn't. Watching all of these characters that we've been building up for the last 4 books, and only to have them all just like ripped away from me, it was too much too quickly. Everything happened at the same time, and I didn't have enough time to like process my thoughts. And later on, we get another chapter called The Sprint, where everything kind of hits me like a truck all at the same time. But I'm jumping around too much. You guys understand what I'm trying to say is that it happened so quickly for me that it really didn't kick in until Guts afterwards, when he's reflecting on all of the times that he had with the Band of the Hawk. It really just made the Eclipse feel that much more impactful. I know I've been going a little bit fast in the beginning of this video, but I did want to take a quick moment to mention I did notice that there was a weird cut at the end of a certain chapter called God of the Abyss. I'll be honest, when I was reading it, I really didn't know what I was looking at, and so I had to do a little bit of digging, and I wasn't wrong. There actually is a missing chapter here, and for the sake of this video, I took it upon myself to read that chapter, or find it online and read the chapter, see what it was all about, and now I kind of understand why it was cut out from the show. Apparently, chapter 83, titled God of the Abyss Part 2, do spoils everything of what Mira's original intention for the finale of the show was going to be. Or I'm not entirely certain that it was supposed to be the finale, but he gave a little bit too much away about what the God Hand is, or I should say what the overarching villain of the entire show is. I think this was a moment where Mira got a little bit carried away and revealed far too much that it took away from the mystery of Berserk. And, you know, any story that over explains everything and you no longer have to keep questioning what's going on in the story, it really just takes you out of the experience. The closest thing that I can liken it to is like the Star Child at the end of Mass Effect 3 that just completely ruins the entire trilogy. So I think it's a very smart idea for Mira to actually ask to pull this chapter down. People have actually made mods in Mass Effect 3 to remove the Star Child from the story just because the ending was that bad. Like you didn't need to give it all away. For the sake of making a YouTube review, I felt it important that I should at least mention it. Sorry for the quick side note. Back into what's actually going on in the Eclipse. The apostles that we see at the beginning of the Black Swordsman arc, it hits completely different. The very first page that we get with Guts and this weird succubus creature that I mentioned in my first review, apparently that's the one that took out Corcus. So suddenly that first scene has significantly more weight to me. Like, this was just some random demon that Guts is fighting. And now it's not so random that like we actually have some context of who this apostle was. The same thing goes for Pippin, you know, like I didn't really care much for the Count's character, but knowing that he was the one who was puppeteering my favorite character, like humiliating him in front of Guts, I was so excited to reread the Black Swordsman arc just so I could see the Count get his comeuppance again. Like it completely changed how I saw the story. The Eclipse just put so many pieces of a puzzle that I didn't even know existed together, and now it just reframes the whole narrative, and it really adds so much more impact to what the Black Swordsman arc was. Now, of course, being that this is the Eclipse, or at least the part that everyone talks about on the Eclipse, there was not really many images that I can show you guys. It is simply too brutal, too violent, and I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about when I say I can't really show images of, how do you even say his name? Femtu? Whatever Griffith's new form is. I cannot show you what Griffith does. I can't show you what happens to Casca, and I definitely can't show you what happens to Guts, or anybody in the Band of the Hawk. Like, it is not safe to show anything that happened in the final moments of the Eclipse. It is just, whoa, wow. But just know that I know, you know, I know, you saw it, I saw it, we all know what's going on. And for me, what makes it significantly worse is that Femto is still aware of his memories as Griffith. He still remembers his friendships, his dreams, and all of the years that he spent with the Band of the Hawk. He knows exactly who Casca and Guts are to him, and he does it anyway. Griffith was an amazing character, and I totally understand why he called upon the God Hand in the first place. I understand that in the moment, in the heat of the moment, I understand why he said, I sacrifice. But what he did as Femto, for me, there's no excuse for that, none. That single act made Griffith completely irredeemable in my eyes. What makes the betrayal so deep is that he's not some mindless demon. He has full knowledge of who these people are and what he's doing to them. It was still him, the same person that we followed for hundreds of pages, and Deluxe Edition Volume 5 doesn't give any comfort afterwards. We just deal with the weight and the consequences of everything that just happened. We're here, it's happening, time to move forward. But you know what? After everything that happened, I gotta give a quick shout out to the Skeleton Knight, Puck, and Rickert. Thank you to the Skeleton Knight for showing up when we needed him most. Thank you to Rickert for somehow making it through. And thank you to Puck for providing the magical elvish powder that's gonna save the day and make sure that Guts and Casca make it out of here alive. It was brutal, but they made it. I also want to give a quick shout out to Godot, Erica, and those elvish minds that were mentioned once upon a time. I know that there were very minute and quiet moments, but everything finally came full circle, and there was a payoff to why they were important in the story. I know it's strange to feel grateful in such a dark arc, but I feel like it just had to be said. Man, and what happens to Casca afterwards? I'll admit, I wasn't ready for. Now, on the bright side, of course, I know what happens to Casca in the middle of the eclipse, but what I didn't know is that Casca actually lives through it. Based off of all of the videos that I saw online, I was pretty confident that Casca was supposed to die during the eclipse, so that was actually a breath of fresh air. But man, it just hits significantly harder when I know that she's left in this vegetative state. Is that how you say it? Is that the word? I can't even think right now. It was so devastating. Like, this one strong character who led the Band of the Hawk for the last year, who was Griffith's right-hand man for who knows how long before Guts pulled up, to watch her be reduced to this mentally absent character who has no knowledge of what happened between her and Guts. She has no recollection of anybody in the Band of the Hawk, and she barely reacts to the world around her. It's just so incredibly cruel what happened to her character. And wow, after everything that she went through, after the love story that she built with Guts, this is what we're left with. This is what her character turned into. At the very least, I'm very happy that she's alive, and I am very much hoping that she comes to in the future based off of what we see in Deluxe Edition Volume 5. I don't know anything that's happening to Casca, you know? Like, I'm very interested to see if her character returns in the future. I really hope she does. But I have to say, like, when we move over to the Conviction arc, the one thing that I was focusing on is, like, how's Casca doing? Oh, holy crap, I forgot to mention. I mentioned in my first review that Guts was being haunted by this, like, fetus creature, and I was right. It was a fetus. That was a fetus creature. What I didn't know is that this fetus creature was actually Guts and Casca's son. Like, oh man, that hits so hard. I thought it was just this random demon that was haunting Guts during the Black Swordsman arc. No, it's his son. Wow, that is so cursed. And it's one of those moments that really just sits with you. Like, how do you even get that out of your head? You can't. You really can't. I can't unread the eclipse or the aftermath of the eclipse. It happened, and now it's just stuck with me. And directly before we get this chapter, there was a chapter called The Sprint, and that is the majority of where my tears fell. Like, watching Guts unable to cope with what he just went through during the eclipse. He's reminiscing on his times with Corcus and Judo and Pippin. Like, watching Pippin carry Guts, and, you know, Guts really hates people touching him. Sorry, I'm getting emotional just talking about it, but like, watching Pippin in his memories, like, carry him when he hates being touched, it's just, wow, this is, these chapters, man. I'm gonna go collect myself. I gotta drink some water and, you know, get my stuff together. This is up there on those shows that it can definitely get to you. But now that we got all of the dark stuff out of the way, they're still coming. Get off me. But now that I got all of the heavy stuff out of the way, there are a couple of things that I do want to mention, because we are going over all of Volume 5, so we do have to move over into the Conviction arc, but I still want to spend a lot of my time here at the Eclipse, or what happens in the aftermath of the Eclipse. I want to make a quick side note. Mr. Skeleton Knight, where could you possibly have to go that's so important? Now, don't get me wrong, I am super glad that the Skeleton Knight showed up to save the day in one of the most epic fashions, but man, can this guy, like, stop speaking in cryptic prophecies for like 5 seconds? Like, please, can you talk to me like a normal person? Where does this guy have to go that's so important? Like, you've clearly taken an interest in Guts. Can you at least, like, train him a little bit? Maybe? What could you possibly be doing that demands your attention 24/7? Hey, Guts, I only got 3 minutes of screen time, so make it quick. Here's some cryptic BS and I've gotta go. GG's. Like, dude, I need some more screen time from you. And right before we get into the Conviction arc, there's something a little odd that I didn't necessarily like regarding the finale of the Golden Age, and that's that Guts' final look is kind of forced. It's like the story has to check off those last couple of boxes before we get to the Black Swordsman arc and, you know, the Conviction arc. Like, he still needs his giant sword. We got to make sure that he's wearing his iconic black armor. We got to make sure that he's got his prosthetic arm with the cannon on it. All of it happens pretty quickly at the end of Volume 5. And don't get me wrong, like, it looks cool, it fits the tone, but like, I don't think it felt as natural or as earned as it could have been. Now, of course, you could argue, oh, we've been building up to it for like the last 5 books, but like, Guts gets his his iconic look within a chapter or two. But after 10 long videos, we are finally at the end of the Golden Age, and we are now moving into the Conviction arc. I gotta admit, the Conviction arc was kind of slow for me. A majority of Deluxe Edition Volume 5 takes place in the Conviction arc, but I gotta say, like, I was still kind of stuck on, you know, what was going on with the Eclipse. I still want to know more about what's going on there. And because of that, like, when the story starts introducing new characters, it felt like the pacing had slowed down to like an absolute halt. And I was like, come on, can we like pick this up? There's some more important things that are going on here that I want to know more about. I kept thinking to myself, like, yeah, okay, Jill, but like, how's Casca doing right now? Now, thankfully, it eventually does pick up into an interesting story, but I'm not gonna lie, it felt a little bit sluggish at first. So the Lost Children chapters, they do start off pretty slow for me, but I have to admit, it does have a surprisingly good payoff. Since we're introducing all of these new characters, I'm not entirely certain who's supposed to be the more important character, and I later find out that it was supposed to be Jill. Jill is the main character so far in the Conviction arc, and she is actually a very interesting character. We got the whole dynamic about what's going on with her dad and what's going on with her mom. Her dad, he's got this like major peaked in high school energy, this has-been war vet who can't stop bringing it up at every 5 seconds, like, don't you know that I served this country? He probably wasn't in that many battles either, but it looks like the story is trying to do something with this character, so I really don't know. I'm not feeling his character at all, but I do know that he's about to go on the hunt for Guts. The whole mystery with the missing children inside of the village. We got the elves of Misty Valley. We also have Jill's long-lost friend, Rosine, who is actually the same elf that we saw with Rickert right when he first met the Skeleton Knight. So all of these little elements, they slowly started to pull me back into the story, and so, you know, for that, you know, I am kind of happy where the Conviction arc is going, but honestly, it felt like it was a little hard to get to that point. And I also have to admit, Puck was a little annoying to me during the Black Swordsman arc. I think I mentioned it in my first video, but all of the comedy kind of felt out of place for how dark the show was. But now that I've read all of Volume 5, like, I don't know what I'd do without Puck. You know, like, he is a very funny character, and he's a nice bit of reprieve for everything that's been going on in the show, and I kind of wish I saw more during the last 4 books. He's grown on me a lot. And at the very end of Deluxe Edition Volume 5, we get the chapter Cocoons, where Guts comes in to save the day, so I don't know what goes on in the story afterwards. I just finished the book like an hour ago, and I literally threw this together because I really had to talk to you guys about it. I read the entire book today, actually, because I could not wait to record. I really had to just talk to you guys while my thoughts were still fresh on the issue. But I gotta say, the ending of the Golden Age was more than I bargained for, and even though I'm well into the Conviction arc, I cannot stop thinking about what happened at the beginning of this book. Even though it took me a minute, I'm starting to get invested on what's going on inside of the Conviction arc. I'm liking where it's going, but I haven't really gotten to a place where, you know, I'm like, wow, this story has got me at the edge of my seat, and I want to know what happens next. You know, like, it's okay. It's enough for me to keep reading, but it's not that same energy. Like, I still want to know what's going on with Rickert and Casca. Guys, there was definitely a ton to go over, and it was quite a journey. Rest in peace to Pippin and Judo. I still think about them right now. I was with my friends a little bit earlier, and I know that they're never going to read Berserk, but like, I just had to tell them what happens. You know, I was just that invested in the story. And I gotta say, the events that took place in the Eclipse, I think that's going to stick with me for a while. I don't think I'm going to be able to unread that. But for those of you guys who are still here, thank you for sticking to the end of this video. If you like this type of content and you want to see more, feel free to like and subscribe. You know, it really does help out the channel. And for those of you who have read this story before, you know, let me know if it had the same impact on you guys. So with that being said, guys, you guys stay beautiful, and I'll see you in the next video. You still here? You know, guys, as I'm like recording this video, I'm finding myself staring into space like an idiot. I don't think I'm okay, like, actually.